The birth of Shinano. In the final years of World War II, Japan was desperate to hold its empire together. American bombers had begun to dominate the skies, and the mighty Imperial Navy was suffering loss after loss. Battleships like Yamato and Musashi were built as symbols of power, but even they could not stop the tide turning against Japan. In 1944, deep inside a secret Japanese shipyard at Yokosuka, a new monster was being born, a ship larger, faster, and stronger than any carrier the world had ever seen. Her name was Shinano. Originally, Shinano was planned as the third Yamato-class battleship, a sister to the massive Yamato and Musashi. But after Japan's humiliating defeat at Midway, the Navy realized the future of war belonged to aircraft carriers, not battleships. So they changed their plan and transformed the half-built battleship into a floating fortress of the skies. Shinano would become the largest aircraft carrier ever built at that time. She measured over 265 meters long, weighed more than 70,000 tons, and was protected by armor thicker than most battleships. Her decks could hold dozens of planes, and she carried enough fuel, ammunition, and crew to fight for weeks at sea. But Shinano's greatest strength, her size, would also become her greatest weakness. Japan was rushing against time. Allied bombers were closing in. Shipyards were being targeted daily, so instead of completing Shinano properly, the Japanese pushed to launch her early, even though she was only about 85% finished. Many watertight doors were missing, pipes were unfinished, and the crew hadn't even been trained properly. Still, Japan believed Shinano could be a symbol of hope, a last chance to turn the tide. On November 28, 1944, in the dark of night, Shinano secretly left the Yokosuka naval base for her first voyage. She carried 2,400 crewmen and was escorted by several smaller destroyers. Her mission was to sail to Kure for final fitting and training before joining the war. But the ocean had other plans, because waiting in those same waters was a single American submarine, USS Archerfish, commanded by Commander Joseph Enright. He had been at sea for days, hunting for targets, frustrated by false alarms and missed chances. That night, his radar picked up a massive contact, a target so huge it barely seemed real. What Enright didn't know was that he had just found the biggest ship Japan had ever built. The hunt begins. The night was calm, the sea almost still. Inside the USS Archerfish, Commander Joseph Enright stood over the radar screen, watching the faint blip appear, and then disappear again. It was huge, far bigger than any ship they had seen in months. At first he thought it might be a battleship or a convoy, but the radar man looked up and whispered, "Captain, that thing's enormous." The crew quickly went silent. Every man knew what that meant, a rare chance at a big kill. Enright ordered the submarine to submerge to periscope depth. The night sky was clear and the moonlight made the sea glow faintly. Through the periscope, Enright saw something massive moving across the water, escorted by several destroyers, zigzagging around it. He didn't know what it was, but he could tell one thing. This was a major Japanese warship, and it was worth risking everything for. The silent shadow. Archerfish began to follow the mysterious ship silently. Every move had to be precise. One wrong noise, and the Japanese destroyers would pick them up instantly. For 6 long hours, the submarine shadowed the carrier at a distance. The Japanese ships were sailing south towards open sea. Enright kept calculating speed, direction, and distance. The submarine's crew barely spoke. Sweat rolled down faces. Oxygen was low, and every sound in the submarine echoed like thunder. But they stayed patient. Enright knew that attacking too early would be suicide. The escort ships were watching carefully. He had to wait until the perfect moment, when Shinano would be exposed and vulnerable. At 2 a.m., luck arrived. The carrier slightly changed direction, unknowingly, turning toward the Archerfish. Enright realized this was it, his golden chance. The attack plan. Inside the submarine, tension reached its peak. Enright whispered the order. "Prepare all torpedo tubes." 6 torpedoes were ready. The crew double-checked everything. Enright wanted a perfect strike, not just a hit, but a kill. The giant ship was armored like a fortress, so ordinary hits wouldn't be enough. They needed multiple torpedoes in a single line. As the carrier moved closer, Enright took a deep breath. He raised his periscope once more and saw the massive outline of the ship. The moonlight reflected on its deck. He could see aircraft on the hangar, though the crew didn't know yet that this was the Shinano, Japan's secret carrier. Enright whispered the command. Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4. 4 torpedoes rushed out, slicing through the water silently toward the giant shadow. The strike. Seconds felt like hours. The crew held their breath. Then, boom. 4 massive explosions tore through the night. The submarine shook from the shock waves. Enright looked through the periscope again, and what he saw stunned him. The enormous ship was hit. Flames and water blasted upward. The escorts went into chaos, firing depth charges into the sea. The submarine quickly dove deep, trying to escape. For hours, Japanese destroyers dropped explosives all around. But the Archerfish survived. No one inside the submarine knew what they had hit. They just knew it was something huge. The giant in trouble. On the Shinano, chaos broke out. The torpedoes had struck the right side of the hull, ripping through unfinished compartments. Since the ship wasn't fully completed, many watertight doors weren't sealed. Water began flooding from one section to another uncontrollably. Engineers tried to stop the flooding, but their pumps failed. The captain ordered the ship to speed up and reach shore, but speeding only made things worse. Water rushed in faster. Within an hour, Shinano was listing dangerously to one side. Officers and sailors tried to fight the flooding, but the damage was too severe. The ship that was supposed to be Japan's pride was dying on her very first voyage. The struggle to survive. By early morning, Shinano's engines were failing. Electrical power was lost. Communication systems went down. The crew used buckets, pumps, and even their bare hands to fight the incoming water, but it was useless. The ship was too big, too damaged, and too unfinished to survive. Captain Jam A.B, a proud officer who believed in honor above all, refused to abandon ship. He ordered the crew to keep fighting, even as the sea rose around them. But reality couldn't be denied. The water reached the lower decks. Planes began sliding off the hangar. Smoke filled the air. The invincible Shinano was now just a wounded beast in the ocean. The final moments. At 10 a.m. on November 29, 1944, just hours after being hit, Shinano's list reached 30 degrees. Men were slipping off the decks into the sea. The captain finally gave the order. Abandon ship. Thousands of sailors jumped into the cold water. The escorts tried to rescue as many as they could. But within minutes, Shinano rolled over completely, her massive hull turning upside down. Then, with a thunderous roar, she sank beneath the waves. The largest aircraft carrier in the world, gone forever. Over 2,400 men died that morning. Only about 1,000 survived. The news reaches America. Meanwhile, the Archerfish had escaped safely. Commander Enright and his crew surfaced after 40 hours underwater. They didn't know what they had destroyed. When they reported the sinking, the U.S. Navy analysts at first didn't believe them. A carrier that large? Impossible, one officer said. But after the war ended, when Japan's records were captured, the truth came out. The Archerfish had sunk Shinano, the biggest ship ever built by Japan. The entire crew of Archerfish became heroes overnight. The aftermath. The sinking of Shinano was more than just a naval loss. It was a symbolic defeat for Japan. A single submarine had destroyed the Empire's greatest weapon, a vessel that never even had the chance to fight. For the Americans, it proved that technology and size weren't everything. Skill, patience, and courage could win even against impossible odds. For Japan, it was a painful reminder that the war was already lost. The legacy of Archerfish. After the war, Commander Enright was honored with the Navy Cross for his incredible achievement. The Archerfish became one of the most famous submarines in U.S. history. In naval academies, this mission was studied for decades as a perfect example of strategy, timing, and discipline. The attack was called the most successful single submarine action of World War II, the mystery of Shinano. Even today, Shinano remains a legend. Many parts of her design were secret, and no photographs were ever released before her sinking. Divers have tried to locate her wreck deep in the Philippine Sea, but she lies nearly 4,000 meters below the surface, silent and untouched since 1944. The ocean guards her secrets well. Lessons from the deep. The story of Archerfish and Shinano teaches a timeless lesson. Even the most powerful weapons are useless without preparation, training, and wisdom. Shinano's rushed construction and overconfidence sealed her fate. The Japanese believed size meant invincibility. But war is not about size, it's about strategy. The human cost. Behind every explosion there were men, sailors who dreamed of returning home. Both on the Shinano and the Archerfish, Young men risked their lives believing they were defending their nations. War doesn't create heroes, it reveals them. And on that night in 1944, both sides showed courage that history will never forget. The Silent Ocean. Today, the waters of the Pacific are calm again. No torpedoes, no explosions, just silence. But deep below, the wreck of Shinano still rests. A monument to pride, tragedy, and fate. And somewhere in naval museums, the name Archerfish still echoes as a legend of the deep. Japan's last hope sinks. As Shinano slipped beneath the waves, the heart of the Japanese Navy sank with her. She was not just a ship. She was a symbol of hope for a nation, already losing the war. But that hope was built on weakness, unfinished armor, untested systems, and misplaced pride. When the water closed over her hull, Japan's dream of rebuilding naval power vanished forever. The once invincible empire of the Pacific was now cornered, outgunned and broken. In Tokyo, officials tried to keep Shinano's loss a secret, fearing it would destroy morale. But rumors spread fast among sailors, whispers of the ghost ship that sank before it even fought. The mighty ocean had buried Japan's secret. But history would not forget. Archerfish returns home. Meanwhile, the USS Archerfish sailed back to port in Pearl Harbor. When Commander Enright reported the sinking of a huge Japanese carrier, his superiors were skeptical. How could a single submarine sink something that big? They asked, but Enright stood firm. He had the radar records, the coordinates, and his crew's testimony. Months later, after Japan's surrender, American intelligence confirmed the truth. Enright had sunk Shinano, the largest warship ever sunk by a submarine. The Archerfish crew was awarded medals, honors, and lifelong recognition. For them, it wasn't just victory. It was redemption. Enright himself had once been removed from command years earlier for lack of aggression. Now, he had achieved one of the greatest submarine victories in history. Legacy beneath the waves. Decades later, Shinano still lies silent on the ocean floor, her steel body resting in eternal peace. No tourists, no divers, no explorers have disturbed her grave. She remains Japan's lost giant, a reminder of how pride and haste can sink even the strongest dreams. The Archerfish, too, was eventually retired, but her name lives on, carved in the memory of every naval officer who studies her mission. In the quiet depths of history, the story of these two ships continues to echo, a story of courage, patience, and fate. Because sometimes, one man's decision can change the course of an entire war. A single submarine, a commander who refused to give up, a nation blinded by pride. The Archerfish versus Shinano battle was not just a clash of steel. It was a battle of minds, of patience, and of destiny. It reminds us that greatness is not about size, but about precision, courage, and timing. The ocean remembers, and history still whispers their names.